Middleman.
I make you welcome to another compelling episode of The Middleman, where untold stories take center stage. Hard questions refuse to stay silent, while truth stands a trial. I am joined by jurors whose insights challenge comfort zones and whose verdicts speak louder than excuses. Juror Evans Ofeli takes on power and restraint in his case in the name of emergency. He questions a Supreme Court ruling that stretches emergency powers too far, warning that when emergency becomes a loophole, democracy itself is what gets suspended. Juror Emeka Madunago questions what education really means in his case. Nigeria's uneducated literates. He argues that degrees without ideas are empty, asking why billions in scholarships and trainings haven't produced solutions and why a country full of graduates still depends on outsiders to fix its problems. While Juror Henry Igwebike, interrogates Nigeria's tax direction, in my case, Tinubu's tax policy, a first world's blueprint in a broken system. I argue that charging taxes like those in the developed nation, but for an impoverished country like Nigeria with no basic services and amenities, is turning reform into punishment, warning equally that revenue without trust only deepens inequality and public anger. These conversations and more will come up right after this break. This is The Middle.
Middleman.
Thank you for staying with us. My case, Tinubu's tax policy, a first world blueprint in a broken system. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's aggressive tax reforms have sparked debates across Nigeria, and his administration appears to be modeling its policies after developed nations, despite the country's glaring infrastructure and governance failures. From multiple levies on goods and services to pressure on small businesses and digital entrepreneurs, the government seems more focused on revenue collection than addressing economic decay. While taxation is necessary for national development, the foundation must be right. Functional roads, electricity, public health care, and education. In a nation like the UK or Germany, taxes work because citizens see value for money. In contrast, however, Nigerians face constant epileptic power, bad roads, poor public services, and rising insecurity. Yet, they are taxed heavily, with little transparency or accountability from those who tax them. Instead of tax justice, the result is tax punishment. The struggling citizens are paying more while government waste, corruption, and elite immunity persist unchecked. The middle and lower classes of Nigerians who already bear the brunt of inflation and naira devaluation are squeezed further. Now, here's my verdict for this story. Tinubu's tax model is tone deaf. Yes, it's very tone deaf to Nigeria's reality. A tax system without trust or structure only deepens the public resentment and widens the inequality gap. Reform must be built on good governance, not just revenue targets. Jurors.
Yeah, very interesting case. Because when you talk about taxes, it's just about public revenue. There are different ways by which government can make revenue, not just through direct or indirect taxation. But the case of Nigeria is that we are not investing in structures and in systems that will generate revenue for the country. Rather, our leaders believe they can spend anyhow and keep borrowing. But you cannot borrow your way to prosperity, like opposition politician Mr. Peter Obi will say. And it's very clear, no nation borrowed its way to prosperity. Borrowing is actually supposed to be an interim measure, but we have now seen for the first time in the history of this country where budgeting in Nigeria has collapsed totally. President Bola Tinubu inherited the 2023 budget from Muhammadu Buhari. He even pushed out a supplementary budget. But all those budgets have failed because none of them has met up to 30 to 35% capital of their capital component. So it has just been moving. Now they're moving 70% again to the 2026 budget. So what's the basis of the taxation? What's the basis of the taxation? You did ways and means. The one you inherited from Buhari, 23 billion naira. 23 trillion, actually $50 billion. You came in and you did your own ways and means of 7 trillion, making 30 trillion. Instead of, now ways and means is a form of borrowing from the CBN. So when you print naira notes, and that's part of the problem we have now. That's part of the reasons why they floated the naira. So that,
because there was so much money in the system.
Yes, because of the printing. So they felt that by floating the naira, the exchange rate will get to a level where, naturally they will mop up.
Oh, to disappear.
They will mop up, the naira. And that's why they've been aggressively selling treasury bills. Because they have been using it to mop up naira from the system. Yes. All these things are orchestrated. The high interest rate. If you say inflation fell to 14%, why are you still retaining interest rates at more than 27%? Why? It ought to have dropped. You tried to sell 182-day, treasury bills. People didn't show interest. You now drag people to 364 days interest rate, treasury bills. You moved from 15%. You moved it to 17% to attract people. So when you look at all these things, the economic problems we have in Nigeria are contrived though. So when you are praying to God, know how to channel the prayer. Because it is just some individuals, for their own selfish reasons, that have put the nation where it is.
The principle that undergirds taxation, is one that is very critical for national income and national growth all over the world. Not like Nigerians hadn't been paying tax before now. We have been paying tax, in fact, extensively. We've been paying tax extensively. Many people pay indirect tax, they don't know. So when you hear people say that in Nigeria they don't pay tax, that's why there's no development. I laugh because that's false. Okay. Now, the restructuring of the collection and the payment of tax and all the innovation that have gone into this particular policy isn't exactly a bad one. Okay, isn't exactly a bad one, but there are certain parameters that this country has not worked on.
Absolutely.
Because the tax sovereignty, protection of the funds, and tax legitimacy must be one that comes to bear. That is why there must be a general agreement. That is why it was laid down before the National Assembly. An extensive debate came on it, up all through until it was passed into law. At this stage, it means that by common agreements and by the common principle of social contract, the country, its citizens and its leaders have agreed on the new tax regime. Okay, that's what it means under the law. That's how the law sees it. However, what we have not agreed on is protection of the resources that will be collected and deployment of the resources for the common good of all. Okay? Before now, our common wealth, which is derivable from oil, from taxation, from our seaports, and from all avenues through which government and national income. These funds have not been deployed in a way that has favored the common citizen. These funds have consistently been deployed, sometimes within the states, sub-national regions, sometimes within the tiers of government, and sometimes within the arms of government. Okay? But our common problem is the corruption that intercepts the flow of that money to the persons who are most affected in society, who actually will need it for health care or health insurance, who will need it for education, okay, who will need it for common prosperity and the creation of wealth. That is where we're having this very big problem. And I've heard people talk about this, people setting ring lights everywhere and talking about if you the next year federal government will go into your account and take money. Nobody is going into your account to take any money. There are a lot of thresholds to these things. The federal government is not going to tug its way into your account. But what they are saying is that your expenditures, you must target proper. When you are doing transfer and all that, do not just make transfer without identifying, because also the federal government is trying to also size the economy properly. Because what we have, what the bank reflects is actually different from what we aggregate as a country when we are determining the size of our economy, because of the informal sector that is not captured properly. So when you look at savings and earnings in the bank, when you compare it to the projections you have outside the formal sector, you find that there's discrepancy. So the government also wants to get to know the size of the economy and how to plan for the general good of all. But the government needs to up its game on protecting the resources. That is much more important even than the tax itself. There's no point paying tax without you having a watertight tax security of the resources. That's one. Two, the case highlights how the government is acting and trying to copy the tax system of already developed countries and trying to run it that way. I think the federal government is also getting it wrong. When people are impoverished, what government needs to do is to create avenues for them to earn. And that is to create jobs, that's employment, to create a credit-driven facility, a credit-driven economy where people can access soft loans, okay, for which they can start small-scale businesses. And then to give grants, and then to take care of the poor. When you do all this and the people now are able to secure resources and wealth, the payment of tax, they will become accountable, because it will be easier to pay tax when you're empowered than when you have nothing at all. So it's much more beyond tax. That's why I keep talking to this man, the Yedele man. All the technicalities you ingesting into this tax thing, we fail if the government does not corresponsibly give the people the leeway to create a level environment for them to earn money. And that is just what it's about.
Yes, this is actually very sad, and unfortunately, the federal government deemed it fit to select 20 social media curators and content makers to help it explain this very complex matter to Nigerians. And imagine what they would
Why would they bring
rather than bring up people who truly do understand
the
things.
tax receipts of those people for the past 5 years? It's meaningless. People, a lot of people are just saying things online that they don't even understand. Telling you that if you have a business name, it is just this, just scaring people, talking rubbish. They don't even understand what it means. Look, if you have done business in Lagos as a registered company in Lagos, in the last 20 years, this tax reform won't even bother you, because there is a template. It's about self-assessment. You assess yourself. That's all. So you know what is coming in. You know how to tag what is coming in. And that's as simple as. But they're telling you guys set up a limited liability company. Because how many people can even run a kiosk? Some women cannot even run a kiosk. Their husbands will stock the kiosk. They will eat all the biscuit and everything in it. You are telling such a person to go and set up a limited liability. You see, the problem is we try to be too elitist in the way we do things. So instead of, taking people at their level and then trying to help them scale gradually, you want to just take them from the ground and take them to the top of the mountain without any training or any scaling or anything. It makes no sense.
Of course, it makes no sense. So we will leave for a quick break, and when we return, Juro Evans Ofeli will be here to present his case titled "In the Name of Emergency." Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Middleman.
Juros. My case, in the name of emergency. The recent judgment by the Supreme Court that appears to bless the president's power to declare a state of emergency and suspend democratically elected government feels less like sober jurisprudence and more like a lamentable surrender to temptation. It is as if the high bench, the custodian of constitutional fidelity, has loosened the sacred moorings that keep a republic afloat, permitting the ship of the state to drift into a shoal of executive aggrandizement. Such a turn is not merely technical. It speaks to the health of our civic imagination and the resilience of institutions that must, in times of fire, perform as bulwarks rather than as backdrops to power. There's a certain poetry to constitutional restraint. It is the quiet act of saying, thus far and no further, when the alluring force of convenience beckons. The emergency power is, by design, an instrument bound by drasticality and brevity, an exception that recognizes its own exceptionality. But when a court whispers approval for a broad and unfettered reach, the exception risks becoming the norm, and the polity is left to reckon with the slow slide from rule by law to rule by whim. To tolerate an elastic notion of emergency is to invite the slow venality of governance, where democratic mandates are hollowed out by the very hand sworn to preserve them. My verdict. This judgment is troubling, not merely for what it enables, but for what it disfigures. It corrodes the separation of power, that elegant lattice work through which a free society breathes. Emergency power, if ever used, must be channeled through rigorous check, clear factual findings, transparent processes, strict temporal bounds, and meaningful legislative and judicial oversight. Absent these guardrails, the executive stands transformed from servant to solitary arbiter, dispensing and retracting democratic legitimacy with the caprice of the monarch. The consequence is not only a legal aberration, but a civic malaise. Citizens who see their ballot nullified by decree will, in time, lose faith in institutions that once promised accountability. I shall go to Allah again.
Yes, so I think this is so critical at this point that we do analysis and equally, make sense of this this abnormal, very bad issue happening in Nigeria. Justicia or Lady Justice in Nigeria should be crying at this point. because what is expected is not what we see. There's no big difference between what we see today under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. You know, in their own case, their Supreme Tribunal of Justice, which is their own Supreme Court, is doing the same thing. In 2027, it stripped the opposition-led National Assembly. 2017. It stripped the opposition-led National Assembly in Venezuela of the power, the legislative power, and carried it and gave to Maduro's office. So which means Maduro is the one, executive, equally the legislature, of course, is taking over the judiciary at the same time.
Is that not what we are trying to do now?
Which for me is more like a judicial coup. You know, the judiciary that should be an arm, you know, is now becoming, you know, something else that we do not know. And I don't know who to explain this better to us and make us, you know, make sense. Because if care is not taken, what we see in Venezuela is what we would see in Nigeria. This is just but, you know, the summary, you know, of what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has had all the while in his mind. Hopefully, you know, sometimes when we talk about the state capture, you know, lots of people, especially his people, you know, would try as much as they can to cover that up and tell us it is not possible to have a one-party system. Even when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said that wipe them clean, you know, that the opposition can be collected as much as that he feels happy when the opposition are in disarray. And these are some of the things that we're talking about. So if the judiciary with the Supreme Court, you know, becoming an arm of the executive rather than an impartial arbiter, then it's a very big issue.
Well, I remember one interesting quote by Shakespeare. I don't remember the full quote, but it says something, I think something like, maybe if you want to change society, first kill all the lawyers. You know? So there was one creative lawyer then, Pharaoh Zako, who wanted to, you know, use such interesting themes, you know, to provoke public discourse. And there was a time, you know, it's late now, he brought out these stickers, you know, and they provoked so much, you know, emotional reactions from lawyers, you know, that was he saying this, that, but he actually got the attention he deserved. Now, is the judiciary now trying to tell us to just simply call for an abrogation of the judiciary? That there should be an abolition, abolition of judiciary? The National Assembly should be abolished? Because if they have become rubber stamp, then why not just domicile? Since it's a three-arm zone, since it's a three-arm zone, is it not better that, you know, just let that three-arm zone just be, you know, just Aso Rock, just the villa? Because we are approaching the villa, you know, National Assembly is on one side, the Supreme Court is on the other side, then you have the presidential villa, which is the executive. So maybe the judges and the senators and members of the House of Representatives should just quit their positions so that we just know that the Attorney General of the Federation becomes the Chief Justice of the Federation. Because by themselves, look at the case of Rivers State. The Supreme Court didn't even treat what lawyers call the rest of the matter, the main matter, because they said it did not originate from Rivers State. So what we are seeing now is that cases are being destroyed based on technical jargons. But is it that the judiciary is trying to push Nigerians to the point where people revolt one day, when one judgment will create so much public outrage that cannot be managed? Because what are you saying? Look at one of the people sacked, who resigned yesterday, Gbenga Komolafe. An NGO took him to court over allocation of oil blocks. Took the matter to the FCT High Court. The FCT High Court now struck out the case on technical grounds that it should not have been filed at the FCT High Court. And now, you know, asked the plaintiff to pay 3 million naira because the defendants demanded 100 million naira. Without looking at the matter, the next thing, what we were saying was that it was defamatory, a case taken to court. Is the court not supposed to be an arbiter? Now they were now taking their funny arguments to the court, and the court acquiesced. But what happened? The president, of course, maybe haven't seen that. What kind of a thing is this? Who knows whether the president was taken aback? That is simply strike out the case. Tell the plaintiff to go and refile. You are now telling the plaintiffs to pay the defendants. When you did it, you know you have no jurisdiction over the matter. So why not just send it, tell the plaintiffs to go to the proper court? You are even not telling them to pay the defendant. I don't understand. I'm not a lawyer, but honestly speaking, I think I find something really curious in that.
Yeah. Can I respond to that? Yes.
Please go ahead, Barrister.
Under the law, there's what we call jurisdiction, and there's what we call course of action. Okay. There are different courts meant for different kind of matter. It's not every matter you take to the Supreme Court directly. It's not every matter you take to the Federal Court directly. It's not every matter you take to the Magistrate Court directly. So, the court that is supposed to superintend over a case must have jurisdiction to hear that matter before you can do that. So, and lawyers are the ones who are trained to understand the court to go to. So when a lawyer goes and files a case in the wrong court, like the one you just explained now, okay, when the adverse party bring a preliminary objection to say the court does not have jurisdiction, the court will strike out the matter and ask the plaintiff to pay the defendant. Yes, to pay the defendant for bringing the defendant to a wrong court, and for the defendant to have expended funds coming to a court that does not have jurisdiction to hear the matter. The plaintiff is expected to know, or the lawyers of the plaintiff are expected to know the right court to go to. So that's jurisdictional issue. Okay. On this issue under reference, the one under reference, the court declined jurisdiction because it said that Rivers State government is not even part of the 11 attorney generals of states that filed that matter, and they did not also show that they have authority of the Rivers State governor to file the matter, so they have no cause of action. That's correct under the law. Okay, but if the Supreme Court wants to decline jurisdiction, it should decline jurisdiction so that the state itself that is really affected can bring the action, or the person truly can bring an action. It's our jurisprudence that cases must be filed in the right court. That is the law. What I quarrel with is this: you decline jurisdiction. After declining jurisdiction, you now say, even though I don't have jurisdiction, let me make a pronouncement on the issue. Okay, that assuming but not considering that I had jurisdiction, this would have been my pronouncement. Then you now went as far as saying that the president have the power under the law to declare a state of emergency, which is not in dispute. It's not in dispute that the president has the power to declare a state of emergency. I mean, the Constitution in Section 305 set that down already, where there's clear and present danger. There's insurrection, mutiny, war, pestilence, disease. There's general lack of public safety. The president, in fact, the Constitution even says that it is the governor of the state that will invite the president to come make that declaration of state of emergency. But that where the governor refuses to do that, the president can declare that state of emergency and then pass the issue through the National Assembly for oversight or their concurrence. And the National Assembly would do by voting. Okay, it went further to clear that the National Assembly was wrong when they did a voice vote as against counting and all that, specifying constituencies of members and the rest of that. It went further, it did well there, stating that. But where it lost it, where the Supreme Court lost it, and I like what the media did. The Supreme Court now said on the issue of removing democratically elected governors, governor institutions, governor, deputy governor, and members of the State House of Assembly, that the Constitution said that the president shall use extraordinary measures. Okay? That the Constitution did not define what the extent to which what extraordinary measure means. They now cited the case of Pakistan, the Constitution of Pakistan and the Constitution of India, and said that in those constitutions, their constitution allow the president to take down democratically elected governors of sub-regional governments, leaders of sub-regional government. But in the Nigerian case, it is not so. The constitution did not say so. Okay? I expected the Supreme Court to be bold enough to say that, however, after that paragraph, however, the president's declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State was right to the extent that it has the power to declare a state of emergency. But the president was wrong to have removed the democratically elected, because see, the office of the president is created under section 130, 430 of the 1999 Constitution. Okay? And the office of the governor itself is also created by a provision of the Constitution. Both the president and the governor stand on the mandate of the people. So the president cannot be standing on the mandate of the people to, truncate, the office of the governor, who is also standing on the mandate of the people at the sub-national level. You understand? So I expected the court to say that clearly, that said that henceforth, it should not be found around our jurisprudence that any president will by any means remove. I expected them to go the whole hog, but they went there and they were talking as if they were scared. With due respect to them, when the Supreme Court is sitting on constitutional matter, there have to be 7 justices. Okay, there was only 1 dissenting voice among it, and some people are still arguing that no, the justices did not endorse what the president did. What do you mean by they did not endorse it? So why do we have a dissenting voice of 1? They did not expressly endorse it, but impliedly they did. They blessed the action of the president by not coming expressly and boldly to condemn and reject that action. And that's what I have problem with. I think we need a Supreme Court that's bold enough to make pronouncements that will protect our democracy.
That's incisive, coming from the juror from Rabbi. Well, if not for time, I would have loved to ask you another question, but
All right, so we will take a quick break, and when we return, Juror Emeka Madunagu will be here to present his case titled Nigeria's Uneducated Literates. Do stay tuned.
Middleman.
Thanks for joining us. My case, Nigeria's uneducated literates. There's this idea that once any Nigerian passes through a tertiary institution, they are automatically educated. So we parade degrees and certifications to no end. We hear of endowments in various institutions by government agencies, private individuals, and corporate bodies. Africa's richest man, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, just announced a 100 billion naira yearly scholarship scheme. Other public-spirited individuals have been doing the same regularly, at different levels anyway. But ask yourself why all these funds haven't translated into patents, groundbreaking discoveries, and solutions to our problems. Similar endowments in US, in the United States of America, for instance, have produced thousands of patents. I've had cause to ask states conducting so-called empowerment initiatives to tell Nigerians what specific goals were designed to come out of them. How many apps, patents, solutions, and all that have they produced? Yet every year, billions are earmarked for skills training. Same thing for our tertiary institutions that produce graduates who can presumably read and write. That's in English. That's why they are literate, but are bereft of ideas to solve basic challenges. And that's why they are uneducated literates, if you get what I mean. Many scholars of old didn't write in English, yet their discoveries transformed humanity. My verdict: our educational system needs a total overhaul. We need to integrate solutions into our curriculum. Our undergraduates must be mobilized for national transformation. We cannot keep depending on foreigners to solve our problems. Dangote had to bring in, I think it was 11,000 Indians to cover areas in his businesses where he couldn't get Nigerians to fill. This is unacceptable. We need a sea change.
Yes, we need a sea change. you said. This reminds me of a young lad who goes around the different campuses in Nigeria. The last one he did on TikTok actually was University of Lagos, the renowned University of Lagos. And he went there with his camera and was taking overview of the place and all that. I could only but weep for Nigeria's tertiary institution. The almighty University of Lagos looks more like maybe a refurbished secondary school. The only interesting part in that video was the nod complex.
Yes,
that was built by that company. That was the only interesting part in
Oluwatobi Ajayi
in the University of Lagos. So the question is, how do you expect to produce the best of the best in such an environment? How do you expect to produce? He now went to University of Nigeria and Soka. That one is deadbeat already. University of Nigeria and Soka is like primary school. No, everywhere is dilapidated. Nothing is working. Nothing is going on there. Everything is just haphazard. And the big question is, how do we produce good graduates from this place, same places? He went to this other one, Lagos State University, which touts as the university with the biggest library in Africa, or in sub-Saharan Africa. And there's no single book in that same library. And the question is, how do we then produce the best of the best when environments are looking very not good?
On scholarly, on academic.
You understand? And most recently, yes.
The priority we place on education is the reason we're moving nowhere, really. We talk about Dangote employing Indians in a massive scale because in a lot of areas we are deficient. Okay? Yes, our technical and vocational education is not working today. Meanwhile, we have a lot of mineral resources. I was discussing with someone, and he told me that Nigeria have a lot of precious stones. Okay, that if our technical institutions were working, a lot of the graduates from there would have, gotten license from the federal government to go get these stones and refine them into serious treasury. Okay, that's just one aspect. Okay, you go to this federal institution, it's nothing to write home about. You understand? We're just going to write exam and come out, write exam and carry certificates and then travel. We're not really innovative. How many of the universities are championing research today or are contributing to knowledge that will transform society? You come to universities in the West, in the Western part of the world, you see how universities champion research, come up with discovery, even rediscover things, okay? The foundations of natural science and the rest of that. There are a lot that is yet undiscovered. How much are we contributing? You expect the universities to bring out the best when most times they are not paid their salaries. Most times they are agitating for funds. ASU is on strike. The lecturers are not motivated. There's no incentive. So there's a case of a lecturer at the Federal University who lamented that he had not been able to buy a car after about 9 years in the teaching business. So, as someone that is grappling with poverty and he has children and wife and family and extended families and dependents, his salary is not able to take him home. You are asking him to go and innovate, to go and discover and then contribute to knowledge. It's a waste of time. If we are serious, we will empower our institutions, give them grants and let them flourish.
But the way I look at it is this, if Dangote has put down 100 billion naira for a yearly scholarship scheme. Now, how much will it take each university? Somebody did the calculation that, for instance, if you give maybe one department or one faculty 20 million naira and say, okay, we are using this to endow a chair or, to give you to go into research, that you have X number of professors, X number of lecturers, X number of students looking into that issue or number of issues. He actually placed the blame at the doorstep of corporate organizations. That instead of paying big companies abroad thousands of dollars, why not take that money, like 20 million, 50 million? There are different problems. For instance, look at Lagos. We keep having the problem of flooding in Lagos every year. Now, Lagos State government came up with the idea of, 3 pump stations, that when there's flooding, they start pumping to the, they start pumping the water away. But I think there could be a solution. We can have a homegrown solution, since we like using that word, homegrown solutions. Then we can challenge, ASU, instead of ASU going on strike for money, salaries that cannot take them beyond salaries that you cannot take home pay. You can actually motivate them by encouraging them with, grants for different, for research into different areas. University of
Before you can motivate an institution like that, the institution must by its own be showing signs or be doing things.
Yes.
Be contributing. Yes, they must be active. No corporate organization will take their money and give to a moribund or a latent institution. In the absence of any contribution or money, what have they been doing? What signs have they shown? A small boy somewhere in the Department of Architecture or building or whatever, they have the solution to that Lagos thing. I'm telling you, they have the solution.
Yes.
What will work is that you will not be listening to. So let them show signs of that, and then the corporate institution will come and sponsor it.
And showing signs of that, how can we even show signs of that when someone did say, I think it was a university or Federal University of Technology, Akure, also their department of mechanical engineering also, they had a breakdown of their generator, right? And they had to go look for Lukman, who services generator outside of the school campus, to come repair their generator, while they train hundreds of mechanical engineers in the same school. So you can see where the issue is even coming from.
But I think also,
so we don't have the ground itself.
I want to marry what you said with what the Juror Rabbi said. My daughter has told me that where they stay, in their school, in the university, that they have colleagues who are reading mechanical engineering. So that what these guys do is that, for instance, their generators, they are the ones who service generators, they tweak their generators, sometimes they dismantle the generators, so they use that as their own practical in mechanical engineering. They teach themselves.
Self-taught.
Self-taught, that is one. So, like, Barrister was saying, the university administrators themselves should show seriousness. But what is happening now? It is actually the students themselves who are engaging in this
training themselves
endeavors. And how do you think, how will somebody now pump money into any of these institutions where the money might even be diverted?
Yeah.
The money might be misappropriated, and you won't get any research done. But tell you what, Nigerians are actually doing things around the world. How come the same Nigerians will leave this country, go abroad, and be working on solutions? Look at Jelani Aliyu. He designed a motor for was it General Motors or Chrysler? Jelani Aliyu, a Nigerian. And look at different things that Nigerians have been doing. How did we get the system? The Finaco? How did we get what many banks are using today? But the point is that there is no incentive to encourage people to actually put in their best and then naturally attract these grants. So there must be a sea change. We don't need to be producing uneducated literates, just literate, but who cannot bring up a solution to any problem, who cannot innovate. So, and that's where we leave the gavel for today on the middlemen. A special thank you to our jurors for their resonating cases. We've heard the cases and now the verdict is yours to carry forward. Follow the conversation at Enterprise TV 7 across all platforms. Let your voice be a part of the movement. Until next time, stay informed, stay safe. And from my esteemed jurors, we say goodbye.